Hello and welcome back to Music Corner on Brian's Things That Are Cool. Father Knows Best, The Mickey Mouse Club, Drive-In Movie Theaters, Sock Hops. The 50s and early 60s was a happy, carefree time. Or was it? Kids back then sure loved hearing macabre pop songs about teenagers getting hit by trains, dying in car crashes, or eaten by sharks. More on that later. They were called death discs or splatter platters by DJs, and they were huge hits. Most of them. Being a teenager is hard, but what is this fascination with death? The origins for these type of songs most likely goes back to the folk murder ballads. At the same time rock and roll was coming into being, a folk revival was underway. The Kingston Trio had a hit with the old-timey murder ballad Tom Dooley, which was a song based on a real murder. At the same time, many country artists were having crossover hits with gunfighter ballads. Johnny Cash had Don't Take Your Guns to Town.
Don't take your guns to town, son. Leave your guns at home, Bill.
Marty Robbins had El Paso, which itself was from an album of nothing but gunfighter ballads. People were really going for story songs about tragedy, and the record companies were ready to deliver. The Splatter Platter began with Black Denim Trousers and Motorcycle Boots by the Cheers in 1955. Written by Jerry Lieber and Mike Stoller, it was released 1 week before the tragic car accident of James Dean. Black Denim Trousers and Motorcycle Boots tells the tale of a biker that was the terror of Highway 101, losing his life after colliding with a diesel truck. The song is a little bit different from the others that I'll be covering in this video, as there's some humor to it. So much so that it was featured as a musical number on SHANGRI-LAS TV series in the 70s, with Bowser playing the title character. While often looked over as far as these type of songs go, I think Elvis's Heartbreak Hotel from 1956 is worth mentioning. This moody, echo-drenched record with burlesque-style drums and bass came from a newspaper article about the sad end of a man who walked a lonely street. This inspired Mae Axton and Tommy Durden to write the song. The demo they played for Elvis was by rockabilly singer Glenn Reeves, who was so unimpressed with the song that he asked for his name to be left off the record. No matter, Elvis loved it. He cut the song during his first recording session for RCA Records in Nashville. Of course, the song is about a man staying at a hotel at the end of a lonely street, and was a massive hit, despite being banned by the BBC on the grounds of being too morbid and tasteless. A subgenre to the Splatter Platter was the tribute song to artists who left us far too soon. In 1955, Veretta Dillard wrote and recorded Johnny Has Gone, about the recent death of R&B singer Johnny Ace.
Johnny has gone.
Johnny lost his life on Christmas Day of 1954. While backstage, he was playing with a gun, and when somebody said, "Hey, watch out," he said, "Don't worry, it's not loaded." Well, that wasn't the case. Veretta also made a record called I Miss You, Jimmy, in tribute to James Dean.
I miss you, Jimmy.
Tommy D had a record called 3 Stars, a 1959 tribute to Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, and the Big Bopper. The song was quickly covered by Eddie Cochran, but not released until long after his own death in 1960. More likely the reason being is that Eddie noticeably breaks down in his version. Eddie toured with both Richie and Buddy, and they were really good friends. Eddie, in his early days as a country musician, cut a tribute record to Hank Williams and Jimmy Rogers entitled Two Blue Singing Stars.
There's two blue singing stars in heaven. I see and hear them every night.
But in the case of 3 Stars, hearing him unable to keep it together while singing a song about 2 musicians he knew personally is rather gut-wrenching.
Buddy Holly, I'll always remember you with tears in my eyes.
Also in 1959, Mark Dinning had Teen Angel. Written by his sister and her husband, Teen Angel tells the story of a couple whose car stalls on a railroad track. The boy saves the girl, but the girl runs back for her high school ring and is killed in the crash. Most U.S. radio stations actually banned the song for being too sad, but it eventually went to #1 in February of 1960.
But you went running back.
There are a handful of records from this period that had this atmospheric quality to them, and this is one of my favorites. Oddly enough, this song was even performed at Woodstock in 1969 by SHANGRI-LAS. At the time, we all had a thirst for teenage blood, and the music industry was willing to give us everything we wanted. There was Endless Sleep from 1958 by Jody Reynolds.
Come join me, baby, in my endless sleep.
Tell Laura I Love Her from 1960 by Ray Peterson. Ebony Eyes from 1961 by the Everly Brothers. Moody River from 1961 by Pat Boone. And Dead Man's Curve from 1964 by Jan and Dean, just to name a few. The fascination even made it across the sea when a 1961 British singer, John Layton, hit big with Johnny Remember Me, complete with a rather eerie backing vocal. A year later, Wayne Cochran, no relation to Eddie, released Last Kiss, the sad story of a fatal crash he chose to tell over rather upbeat music. J. Frank Wilson and the Cavaliers toned it down a little bit and had a bigger hit with it, beating both Elvis and the Supremes on the Billboard charts. Decades later, in 1999, the song would even be recorded by grunge legends Pearl Jam. Right before Beatlemania took over, girl groups ruled the land, and with the popularity of teen tragedy songs, it was a perfect fit. Enter the Shangri-LAS with Leader of the Pack. The song tells the story of Betty and her explanation of why the bad boy she's been dating won't be picking her up after school that day. The song went to #1 on the Billboard charts, and in 1982, Leader of the Pack was covered by Twisted Sister on their album Under the Blade. In that version, Betty dies, and the bad boy was the one begging her to drive slow. Most of these songs deal with teens dying in horrific, blood-soaked, gore-tastic transportation accidents. But they died in other ways as well. Running Bear from 1959 by Johnny Preston and written by J.P. the Big Bopper Richardson had both lovers drown. The Prom by Del Shannon from 1961 has the girl already dying outside of the school, but doesn't explain why. And then there's The Water Was Red. There's a lot going on in this 1961 Johnny Symbol song. The song failed to chart and actually lost Johnny his contract with MGM Records. Not hard to see why. The song tells the story of a couple on the beach falling in love and playing in the ocean as the sun is setting, making the water appear red. Very nice. Beautiful. Then the girl gets eaten by a shark. If that's not bad enough, the boy then goes into the water seeking revenge against the shark, cuts off his fin with a knife, and walks back with fin in hand to the girl's remains that he left on the sand. Creative, if nothing else. Like with any popular fad, eventually it's going to be parodied, and the Splatter Platter was no exception. In 1965, the Detergents spoofed Leader of the Pack with Leader of the Laundromat, in which the singer's parents shun the girl because their shirts come back brown. Funny song, but it did result in a lawsuit from the Leader of the Pack songwriters that was settled out of court. Also in 1965, Johnny Cross had I Want My Baby Back. While making references to other hits in the genre, the song tells the story of a tragic crash that he survives, while his girlfriend is horrifically dismembered. Then he feels so upset that he digs her up and gets in the coffin with her. dark humor or really messed up, I can't tell. It's hard to say when this particular type of song ended, as tragic songs are still produced today. Even into the late 60s, we had songs like Dickie Lee's Lori Strange Things Happen, a retelling of a classic ghost story. Then, of course, we had Ode to Billy Joe by Bobby Gentry in 1967, but that's more or less a country story song. It does seem that dead teenager songs have died down, forgive the pun, in recent years, but I'm sure there are artists out there willing to take a walk on the darker side of life. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed my look at Splatter Platters. If you want to be kept up to date as to when I release a new video, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And if you really want to be notified, hit that bell as well. I'm Brian, and if you're out on a date in your daddy's car, be careful.